All right, today we're going to talk about a feature in Snowflake that is a real game changer for your productivity. I'm talking about secondary roles. Let's dive right in.
So if you're a Snowflake user and you've got a bunch of different roles, you know the feeling, right? That little bit of friction, that constant contact switching just to query different tables. You're in the zone, you're focused on a task, and bam, you've got to stop everything and change your role.
And then you get this. Oh yeah, does this error message look a little too familiar? It's so frustrating, especially because you know you have a role with the right permissions. You just forgot to switch to it. That one little interruption, it can totally break your workflow.
So let's really dig into this constant role switching problem. Think about it like this. You've got keys to a whole bunch of different rooms. One for dev, one for testing, maybe another for analytics. But the old way of doing things meant you could only use one single key at a time.
Yeah, before secondary roles came along, trying to access different environments, say dev and test, meant you were just constantly running that use role command over and over. It's tedious, it's inefficient, and honestly, it's just a huge drag on your workflow.
Okay, but what if you didn't have to choose? What if you had like a master key that lets you unlock multiple doors all at the same time? Well, that is exactly where secondary roles come in. This is your role's superpower. And this right here is the core idea. It's a union of privileges. So instead of having these walled-off, isolated sets of permissions for each role, secondary roles give you a combined set of rights. It's the sum of your main primary role plus all your active secondary roles. It's like you get to wear all your hats at the same time and access everything you need.
Now, this brings up a really important distinction, a clear separation of duties. Think of it this way. Your primary role is for building things. It's for creating objects. It's the role that owns those objects. Your secondary roles, they're all about accessing stuff and using that powerful combo of privileges to get work done.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this actually play out in the real world? Let's walk through a super common use case for, say, a DevOps engineer who's constantly jumping between environments. So here's the challenge. You need to clone a customer table from the development environment, dev, over to the test environment, test. The goal itself is simple, right? But the old way? Oh man, it was a pain. You'd have to switch your role to dev, query the table, then switch your role again to test, create the new table, and then finally run the clone command. It was just a mess of steps.
And now, check out the power of the new way. It's just 3 simple steps. First, you set your primary role to where you want to write the data. In this case, that's our test_DevOps role. Step 2, you set your secondary role for where you need to read the data from. So our DevOps role. And then step 3, you just execute a single query that crosses both environments. One command. That's it. It's so much cleaner.
All right, so every superpower has its rules, right? It's kryptonite. And to use secondary roles safely and effectively, there are a few really critical things you got to know, especially because of some pretty big recent changes from Snowflake.
So Snowflake recently pushed a fundamental change to how secondary roles work by default. It wasn't just a flip of a switch. They rolled it out in phases. There was an opt-in phase, then an opt-out phase where it became the default, and by about mid-March 2025, this new way of working became generally available for everyone.
So what does this all mean for you? Well, the bottom line is this. For new users, Snowflake now automatically activates all of your granted roles as secondary roles by default. You don't have to do anything. You get that amazing union of privileges right out of the box. It's a huge convenience boost.
And that sounds amazing, doesn't it? Maximum convenience, maximum power. But is there a catch? Well, yeah, there kind of is. While this whole combined privilege model is awesome, it doesn't work absolutely everywhere. And there is one really specific scenario you absolutely need to watch out for.
And here it is, straight from the source. The documentation is very clear. Secondary roles can't be used inside an owner's rights stored procedure. So when you're running one of these specific procedures, the whole game changes. It doesn't matter what secondary roles you have active. Only the privileges of the single role that owns the procedure are recognized. All your other roles are basically ignored for that moment. It's a subtle point, but it is absolutely critical to remember.
Okay, so with all that in mind, let's pull this all together. Let's talk about really mastering your access.
All right, if you're going to take away just 3 things from this, here they are. First, stop the switch. Use that use secondary roles command or just lean into the new default setting where all your roles are active at once. Second, remember the difference. Primary roles create and own things. Secondary roles access things. And third, know the limits. You got to be aware of that default secondary role setting and, most importantly, that big exception with owner's rights stored procedures.
Look, at the end of the day, this feature gives you incredible power. It's a massive convenience. But with great power, well, you know the rest. With all roles now active by default, you have to think more strategically about security. The question you have to ask yourself isn't just, what can this one role do anymore? It's, what can all of a user's roles do when they're all combined? It's a huge shift in thinking. You've got the power, but how will you balance that convenience with security?